Let me start this way. If you believe that the life after you leave this body is a continuation of your spiritual journey, then I like to think about the idea that when that man Jesus, who died in a really ugly way, that was punishment for criminals in the Roman Empire, that when the life left his body, he continued to evolve. And so the living spirit of that one, to me, and you'll have to make this determination for yourself, the man becomes merged with the greater spirit of divinity to which we live our lives. That's the way I like to think about Jesus today. Thank you, Roger. Okay, so the sermon title today is Who is Jesus? But we're going to talk about who is Jesus, who was Jesus, who is Jesus today. And so congratulations for stepping into this Sunday with this title, because this is kind of a controversial, surprisingly controversial topic in churches. Figure that out. So I figure you fall into one of three camps. I love Jesus. I think Jesus is great. Jesus is my friend. Jesus is my brother. Or you're in the camp of, oh, well, I don't know. I haven't thought about Jesus in a long time. I'm kind of neutral about Jesus. Yeah, Jesus is just all right by me, I guess. And then you might fall into the camp that says, I don't ever want to hear that name again. That name was weaponized against me. And I don't want to talk about Jesus. So if you're in that camp, I especially applaud you for sticking today, because this is something we need to talk about. We need to know where we stand in today's issues going on, because there's a lot of polarity right now, and there is a lot of also blending of religion and politics that's, in my opinion, not necessarily healthy. So we need to know where we stand, right? So if you'll indulge me for a moment, I'll share a little bit about my journey so that you get an idea of where I'm coming from. So I didn't have a whole lot of church when I was growing up as a small child. When I was about 4 years old, I remember going to my granny's church in North Fort Worth, where they had those cool, old round milk glass looking light fixtures hanging down, and we had cardboard fans. So I remember there being some pretty raucous music and fans. That's my memory. And then my parents married when they were young. My dad had just gotten out of the Navy, and so he went back to college after he got out of the Navy, and I went to his baccalaureate at First Methodist Church in Fort Worth. It was the first time I'd been. If you know Fort Worth, that's quite a monumental church. And my mom says that when I was sitting there during the baccalaureate in this incredible, I'd never been in a church like that ever. And I said to my mom, I think God lives here. That was kind of cool. But then I didn't have a lot of church for the intervening years until I was about 9 or 10 years old. So at one point, for my 8th birthday, I got this illustrated Bible with the colored pictures on the inside and illustrations of Jesus with the children. You can look at this later if you want to. This was presented to me by my parents on my 8th birthday. Just for reference, I'm going to be 69 on that birthday in July. So this is a 61-year-old Bible. That's kind of cool. And then when I was 10, my parents gave me this Bible. I'm handling it very carefully because this is the original cover. And it's even got my name embossed on it. I thought I was all that when I got this Bible, because then we were going to church. My first knowledge of Jesus was the story with the children, of course, because that's taught in Sunday school a lot. And so Jesus was a nice guy in those early years of my religious education. Jesus was a nice guy. He was the guy on the cover of the Bible. But then as I continued my Southern Baptist journey, I got this feeling that I was never going to be able to make up for the great sacrifice that was made for me as a sinner. And I couldn't reconcile, even as a 10 or 11, 12-year-old, I couldn't reconcile how all my sins were forever forgiven, but I'd better not sin because that's bad. But they're already forgiven. But if I sin, there's still a chance I could go to hell, but maybe not. How many children have been confused by that message? I see 6 of you. So that was confusing. And I may have shared this with you before, but I remembered that in those years before Southern Baptist Church, we lived up in the Northeast and in the Midwest, and I was exposed to all kinds of churches. We lived next door to a rabbinical student and went to Shabbat on Friday night at his house, at Shabbat dinner, and with him and his wife, and my dad went to their son's bris, and in Cincinnati, I was in a school program. I got to go see a Greek Orthodox church. And so I was exposed to all these different religions before I ever got the Southern Baptist thing. So I drove my mom crazy asking about what was going to happen to the Jews. They were the chosen people, but they weren't Christian. They were the chosen people of God, but they hadn't accepted Jesus as their personal Lord and Savior, so what was going to happen to them? That's a troubling question for a child, especially when you have the responsibility to try to convert people. I mean, how were you going to get to all the Jews? And weren't they already chosen? And my mom, God bless my wise mom, she said, God chose the Jews a long time ago, honey, and he's taking care of them, and you don't need to worry about the Jews. Well, that was a big relief on my little 10-year-old heart, you know, because I was worried about the Jews. Now, the Chinese, that was another issue. You know, what about them? Because this was during the Cold War, and oh my gosh, Chinese must be going to hell because, you know. I worried about a lot of stuff like that when I was a kid. Thank you to the Southern Baptist indoctrination I was receiving. It's hard enough growing up and going through puberty and all that. And now, listen, let me say, this sounds very intolerant of the Southern Baptists. That is their path, but it's not mine. And it hasn't been mine for a very long time. I spent a lot of my formative years being afraid that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't converting enough people, that, oh my Lord. And suddenly Jesus became a burden to me. And I didn't like that because Jesus is on my Bible talking to kids. So what am I supposed to do with this Jesus now? And he became something that became farther and farther and farther away from me. So I got a big scholarship to Baylor, and I started going to the Episcopal Church. And I converted to Episcopalianism when I was in a Baptist college. And that was cool. My parents were cool with it because they were going to the Methodist church. So we all kind of parted ways with Southern Baptist. And that continued along for a while. And then my mind started opening up, thank you, to metaphysical stuff, paranormal stuff, psychic fairs. Remember the psychic fairs of the 80s? Started going to psychic fairs, and I had a very good friend who was kind of questioning. She was Catholic, and so we were looking at all these other things, and I remember asking her very distinctly. So I was now in my late 20s, early 30s. I remember asking her very distinctly, what if it's more important to love God than to worry about Jesus? She said, I think you're onto something there. Because I hadn't thought much about God. It was all focused on Jesus. And so then I found unity, and, you know, it's kind of like the rest is history. But along that way, I taught in a Catholic high school in Fort Worth, And I remember one of the priests there on a little half-day faculty retreat led us in a meditation, not just a prayer, meditation with this priest. And he called Jesus our brother and evoked Jesus as a companion, not a rule maker, not a died for me so I better behave person. And that kind of shifted that understanding of Jesus. And about the time I was leaving that school to go to Unity Ministerial School was when the bishop decided that non-Catholic teachers at the school couldn't take communion, and said, okay, I'm out. So I went to Unity and I learned about Jesus in a whole new way. And I kind of got into that place where I really thought that, I'd figured Jesus out, because Jesus became a metaphysical figure. Jesus became a living spirit. But I have to tell you that we grow and evolve in our spiritual understanding until forever. I think even after we leave this life, we continue to grow in spiritual understanding. I can't wait to find out what that's like. Well, I mean, I can wait, but I'm good. I'm good being here. But my ideas about Jesus have changed even more. And so then I had to, by the way, while I was teaching at the Catholic high school, I was getting a master's degree in history. And so to me, it was hard to look at Jesus without having any historical evidence. And there isn't much. There is not much historical evidence of the man who lived. There's a little bit by Josephus, who was a historian for the Roman Empire. There's a little bit by Tacitus, and a little bit by Pliny the Younger. Those are the only mentions that you'll find of Jesus. It's very, very scant. And so what we looked at in seminary was how there was a man, and then he had a message that we focused on, and then there was this monument that we built to that man, and then there was a machine that we built around the monument. And it was a great revelation to me to discover that a lot of the damage that had happened in my spiritual life was because of the machine. So I backed up a little bit. I even had a great meditation experience where I encountered a living spirit, but it wasn't a man, it was a light. And after all these years, that meditation was 36 years ago. After all this time, I'm still reflecting on what that experience with the light was all about. And I'm glad I don't have all the answers. So one of the things that we were introduced to in seminary that I still follow now is a group of scholars called the Jesus Seminar. Any of you heard of the Jesus Seminar? I know Cindy has. Yeah. So the Jesus Seminar has been, well, this won't surprise you. Mainstream Christianity kind of poo-poos the Jesus Seminar because they don't like their scholarship, they don't think they have enough credentials, blah, blah, blah. And of course, Unity embraced it. Because we're iconoclastic that way. We like to knock down as many pieces of the machine as we can. And continue doing it, my friends. Continue doing it. It's a scary thing to step out there and let your spirituality be determined by your personal relationship with the divine. It's a scary thing. Not to lean into the machine and let it tell you what the rules are. It's an act of courage to embrace your personal spirituality and begin to tame those messages that would have you think that you are less than, that you're not entitled to, you're not smart enough, and who do you think you are to determine your own spirituality. And if you're still struggling with that, my friends, I encourage you to find healing around that. Get your hands on everything that you can read. Talk to somebody you consider a spiritual confidant to lay to rest any damage that might have been done to you by the machine of Christianity. Let me tell you, yesterday I went to my great-niece's graduation. She graduated from St. Michael's Catholic Academy. The commencement was held at Riverbend Church, which used to be Southern Baptist, hasn't been for a long time. The commencement speaker was a woman of color who not only provided food as nourishment to their bodies. She provided spiritual food in prayer groups that she led at the church. And she spoke yesterday, and I've got to tell you that it was the best commencement speech I have ever heard. I wish I had written down the 10 steps. I've never seen anybody deliver 10 steps so fast, because she knew who her audience was. But during that Catholic commencement held in a former Baptist church with a woman of color speaking to a mostly white and Hispanic audience, one of the ASL interpreters was an Orthodox Jewish woman. And I thought, the spirit of everything is right here. The spirit of everything is right here. I'll get back to the Jesus seminar in a second. But here, I want to say this. The Christian nationalism that's going on in our country today, I will speak against it because it is the glorification of the machine. And it's trying to impose itself upon so many aspects of our lives. And prayer is being used as a weapon to pray away people that are different, to pray away people that don't believe the same thing, to pray away the gay, to pray away everything that is not like the machine. And you know what happens to us as a people when we do that? We contract ourselves. We get like this, withered up and small. Tell me how much light is going to get into this? Not much. And so it's up to us as people of the light, not to pray away things, but to pray for things, to pray proactively for peace and harmony, to pray proactively for people that are different from us, believe different from us, to pray for ourselves, to pray for people who are like us, to pray for, in other words, everybody, to pray for everybody. Our lives depend on it. Our lives depend on a spirit of generosity, and we must shine our light right now more than ever because we need it. We need it as a country, which means that we're also praying for and with those who are gathered around the machine. Not out of pity, not out of spite. Don't you be praying like, okay, y'all get it together now. I'm praying for you to get enlightened. It's not exactly the spirit of prayer I'm speaking of, because all of us have stood in the place of, I believe, help my unbelief. All of us have stood in that place. So we must pray with humility and generosity. So if we built this whole machine, and if it weren't for Christianity, unity wouldn't exist. There's that. But if we built this machine, if we built the thing out of which we sprang around this Jesus person, then who was he? If he didn't exist in history except for 3 or 4 very brief references, we know that there was a man born in Nazareth, not Bethlehem. Sorry, hope that doesn't mess up your creche or your Christmas story. Doesn't really matter where the stable was, does it? Okay, let me just read to you what the seminar has reconstructed about the historical Jesus. They portray him as an itinerant Hellenistic Jewish sage and faith healer who preached a gospel of liberation from injustice in startling parables and aphorisms. An iconoclast, Jesus broke with established Jewish theological dogmas and social conventions, both in his teachings and in his behavior, often by turning common sense ideas upside down, confounding the expectations of his audience. He preached of heaven's imperial rule, traditionally translated as the kingdom of God, as already being present but unseen. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? He depicted God as a loving father. He fraternized with outsiders and criticized insiders. Yay, Jesus. According to the seminar, Jesus was a mortal man born of 2 human parents. He did not perform nature miracles, nor die as a substitute for sinners, nor rise bodily from the dead. Oh, no. He didn't rise bodily from the dead. There goes Easter. Where's Jennifer? One less holiday to have to plan around. I'm just kidding. Sightings of a risen Jesus represented the visionary experiences of some of his disciples rather than physical encounters. While these claims, not accepted by conservative Christian laity, have been repeatedly made in various forms since the 18th century, the Jesus Seminar addressed them in a unique manner with its consensual research methodology. So one of those people is a great Catholic scholar named John Dominic Crossan. I recommend his work. And what the Jesus Seminar did, one of the things that they did, was they took the Bible. Do you remember? Let's see if I can find a page here that'll work for you, like the Sermon on the Mount. So, it was real important to me as a child because I did sword drills where you had to find, you got prizes if you were the first one to find a Bible verse. So I don't know if you can see this from here, but this is the Sermon on the Mount, and it's all in red letters, right? So I was taught growing up, this is what Jesus said. Somebody was there scribing in 17th century English what Jesus said. And if you weren't reading the red letters, well, don't bother. So what the Jesus Seminar did was they started looking at all of the statements that are attributed to Jesus. And they said, here's what they would mark with, they would vote. And then they created a printed version of the Bible based on this. Red beads, when you voted, indicated that the voter believed Jesus did say the passage quoted or something very much like it. A pink bead meant that the voter believed Jesus probably said something like the passage. A gray bead went, they believed that Jesus did not say the passage, but it contains Jesus's ideas. And guess what the black bead was? Jesus didn't say that. It came from other admirers or from a different tradition. So if the whole Jesus story is thrown into question like that, then what are we doing? Who are we? If some of those basic stories, like what if the empty tomb didn't really happen? What if he didn't raise somebody from the dead? What if? What do we do with that now? There was something that happened 2,000 years ago in which this itinerant Jewish traveling scholar said words that resonated with a universal truth that was already present. He even said, "This is what I'm doing. I'm saying things to you that are already inside you." And so was it just a happy accident that this man was saying things that he believed to be true and divinely inspired by his relationship with the being he called Abba or Father? Was that an accident? I don't think so. I think this man said enough things, enough times, that challenged the traditional Jewish order of things, that he was considered a threat. But of course he would be. Because Jesus himself was speaking against a machine. Do you see? And the words that he spoke resonated all these centuries later, millennia later, with us sitting here in this room. Are they the same truths that were spoken by the Buddha, by the Prophet Muhammad, by the great Asian scholars? Was he speaking the same truths that are spoken by the first tribe people, the First Nations people of this country? Was he espousing the same principles of people that have never been exposed to a religious machine whatsoever? Of course he was. Of course he was. He was speaking about kindness and goodwill and acceptance and generosity in the sweetness of having times of drawing away to be with the Spirit that enlivens us. So yes, he was speaking things that speak to us now, no matter what color the Jesus Seminars said it was. And in a way, those people who wrote the Gospels, which occurred anywhere from 40 to 50 years CE, up to 100 years CE, up to all the works of the scholars and the theologians that canonized the scriptures, everything in between. It created something that we could hold on to. And I have to believe, if you believe that the life after you leave this body is a continuation of your spiritual journey, then I like to think about the idea that when that man Jesus, who died in a really ugly way, that was punishment for criminals in the Roman Empire, that when the life left his body, he continued to evolve. And so the living spirit of that one, to me, and you'll have to make this determination for yourself, the man becomes merged with the greater spirit of divinity to which we live our lives. That's the way I like to think about Jesus today. Honestly, I think the man Jesus would be appalled at the machine that has been proliferated into these days. I think he would have probably been appalled at the Catholic Church as the first organized religion around those teachings. I think he would just say, hey, this is not what I meant. Don't do that. When he said no one comes to the Father but by me, he didn't mean him. He meant that spirit that lives in all of us. That's what he meant. And so it doesn't matter what religion you're practicing. There's certain virtues and principles and characteristics of a godly life. So if your atheist friend says, look, I'm just trying to live the best life that I can, you know what? That's a godly life. Don't tell them, but it is. And my dear friends, please, wherever your spiritual understanding is today, don't bludgeon anybody with it. Even with your good, well-intentioned prayers. Don't do that. Your family thinks you're crazy because you go to a unity church. It's all right. It's okay. You're not superior. You're not inferior. You're just on a different path. And that's a good place to be. So anytime you see an image, I'd say Jesus' hair here is probably the same color as mine, minus the gray. He's pretty white. Look at other pictures. He's got pretty nice blue eyes. That wasn't who Jesus was. That's a Jesus that we created in our own image. That famous one that hung in every church I went to of Jesus knocking on the door. And that was a white Jesus. That's the whitest Jesus. So if you bring it back down to this was a Jewish man with features of the region in which he lived. He just figured some stuff out, and he had the courage to say it. He demonstrated what it's like to live from those virtues. He demonstrated curiosity. He demonstrated questioning things that don't make sense to you. If you're doing that, then all this Christianity will have been worth it. Does that make sense to you? So I don't know, the phrase that keeps coming into my head is rage against the machine. Rage against the machine, but only to bring about good in the world, my friends. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. All of those qualities and characteristics that Jesus spoke about, that we think he spoke about, anything that resonates with the deeper truth in us, live that way. Live that way. And if you want to have a thing of footsteps on your wall, that's okay too. Because, man, there are times when we need to lean into that spirit, lean into it because of our own human fallibility. We don't know how to do life. That's okay. So I'll just leave you with that today. Ponder what Jesus was, what Jesus is, why you're here. How does this resonate with you? How do you identify with the very best that we are meant to be. I'm enjoying being on the journey with you, truly. So thank you for your attention and for being with me today.
A celebration of life service for our friend Alex Green will be held on June 8th in Friendship Hall. A Zoom link will be available to those who can't attend in person. Check the UCOH calendar for the link, please. Beginning June 9th, in a couple of weeks, the 11:30 Sunday service start time will be changed to 11 a.m. Yeah, at least one guy is excited. Set a reminder to join us for the earlier start time, and please tell your friends. While you're at it, you might want to set another reminder for the same June 9th date. UCOH's identity meeting at 1:30 in Friendship Hall. The core values and mission/vision teams will share their work with the community and invite your input. Your presence is valued and much appreciated. The YFM children will not be joining us at the end of service from June 9th through July 28th. Their classes will continue during this time with lots of fun and spiritual learning. We look forward to welcoming them back to service on August 4th. Get your aprons on and your baking sheets ready for the Father's Day dessert design competition on Sunday, June 16th. We invite you to co-create your dessert design with anyone in your life who supported you as a father role and bring to church to share with the rest of the congregation. Check the UCOH calendar for details. Our We Wisdom is looking for a preschool teacher. If you or someone you know would like to work with our precious little ones, contact Carey Monk, We Wisdom Director. Please see the website for more information. Have you ever wondered, why am I here again? Me, only every day. Next Sunday at 8:30, for the service, grab a cup of coffee and a pastry and join licensed Unity teacher Kathy Schwanke, what a great name, in Legacy Suite or on Facebook to find the answer. Then we're happy to welcome Reverend Sandra von Gillenband back to our platform for the 11:30 service. Join Reverend Sandra in the sanctuary or online as she explores how surrendering control and trusting in a higher power can lead us to profound spiritual growth. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I circulate, and I am grateful.
It's a scary thing to step out there and let your spirituality be determined by your personal relationship with the divine.